In 2015, Valve dropped SteamOS 1.0 and the entire gaming industry laughed. Microsoft and Sony openly mocked Steam. Tech journalists wrote endless articles calling it an embarrassing failure, and it looked like Gabe Newell's dream of conquering the console market was completely dead on arrival. Fast forward to today, and the narrative has violently flipped. Steam Deck is moving millions of units, completely dominating the handheld gaming market, and fundamentally terrifying the exact same corporate giants that used to make fun of them. So how did we get here? To understand the sheer magnitude of what Valve accomplished with SteamOS, you have to rewind the clock back to the summer of 2012. Steam was completely unchallenged, dominating the digital distribution market and printing billions of dollars. PC gaming was entering a golden age. But 800 miles away in Redmond, Washington, a massive corporate storm was brewing. Microsoft was preparing to unleash Windows 8, and it was about to send shockwaves of absolute panic straight through Valve's headquarters. When Windows 8 finally hit the market, it famously ripped out the iconic start button and forced a clunky touchscreen-focused grid of massive tiles onto users. For traditional desktop gamers, this jarring, bloated layout known as the Metro UI was an absolute nightmare. But inside Valve, Gabe Newell and his engineering team weren't losing sleep over a terrible user interface. The real terror was the introduction of the Windows Store. Microsoft had been watching Apple build a multi-billion-dollar empire with the closed ecosystem iOS App Store, where Apple aggressively controlled what could be installed and took a mandatory 30% cut of every single transaction. Microsoft wanted a piece of that action. Valve suddenly realized how incredibly vulnerable they were. They were the undisputed kings of PC gaming, yet their entire kingdom was built on rented land. As Gabe Newell himself admitted, Valve had been a free rider on the Windows highway for over a decade. If Microsoft successfully locked down the PC ecosystem, Steam could be wiped off the map overnight. There was only one logical escape route, but it was a path nobody in the gaming industry wanted to take: Linux. In the fall of 2013, Gabe Newell officially announced SteamOS. This wasn't just a basic software update, it was a completely custom operating system built from the ground up on Debian Linux. It was designed entirely around the Steam Big Picture interface, deliberately stripping away the clunky Windows desktop experience to give players a seamless, controller-friendly dashboard. The overarching idea was brilliantly simple. You plug a PC into your flat-screen TV, boot up SteamOS, and instantly unlock a flawless console-like experience with your entire massive Steam library ready to go. Valve wanted to give PC gamers the couch gaming comfort of a PlayStation or an Xbox, but without the rigid closed ecosystem restrictions of Microsoft or Sony. However, there was one massive catch. Valve was fundamentally a software company. They had absolutely zero desire to get bogged down in the brutal, expensive logistics of manufacturing their own physical hardware. Instead, they simply handed the blueprints over to third-party PC builders. When the first wave of Steam machines finally launched in 2015, what was supposed to be a gaming revolution instantly turned into an absolute mess. Valve had outsourced the manufacturing to a massive roster of third-party companies like Alienware, CyberPower, and iBuyPower, effectively flooding the market with dozens of completely different competing machines. There was absolutely no baseline for what a Steam machine actually was. Some were cheap budget boxes starting at $400 with incredibly weak integrated graphics, while others were massive, towering monoliths packed with desktop-grade GPUs that cost well over $1,500. For regular consumers, this created a paralyzing level of confusion. If you walked into a store and bought an Xbox or a PlayStation, you knew exactly what you were getting, and that every single game would work flawlessly right out of the box. But if you bought a Steam machine, you had absolutely no idea if the expensive box in your hands could actually run the specific games you wanted to play. You just dropped over $1,000 on a top-of-the-line Alienware Steam machine, you hook it up to your massive living room TV, and you eagerly log into your account. But the second your library loads, you are hit with a brutal reality check. Suddenly, you realize that roughly 80% of your entire Steam library is completely unplayable. The biggest competitive multiplayer shooters? Forget about it. The massive AAA open-world blockbusters? Not a chance. For the vast majority of your favorite titles, you weren't looking at an install button, you were just staring at a brutal, unyielding warning message, not available on SteamOS. Valve knew this was a massive roadblock, so they went on a desperate campaign, begging major game studios to create native Linux ports of their titles. But the developers almost universally refused. By 2018, the tech industry had officially pronounced SteamOS completely dead on arrival. The gaming community almost completely ignored them, choosing to stick to the safety and reliability of traditional consoles or standard Windows rigs. Tech journalists had an absolute field day, writing endless, brutal autopsy articles dissecting exactly how Valve's multi-million-dollar gamble to capture the living room couch had failed so spectacularly. The final official white flag came when Valve quietly scrubbed the Steam machine's hardware tab directly from the navigation bar on the front page of the Steam store. On the surface, it looked like Microsoft had won a definitive, crushing victory. Windows remained the completely undisputed, unchallenged king of PC gaming, and the running joke about the elusive year of the Linux desktop was funnier than ever. Or so everyone thought. What the industry completely failed to realize was that Gabe Newell and his engineering team hadn't given up at all, they had just gone underground. They needed to figure out a way to force Windows games to run flawlessly on Linux without the original developers having to change a single line of code. To pull off this impossible feat, Valve partnered with a brilliant group of open source developers at a company called Codeweavers. While the tech media thought Valve had completely abandoned the Linux dream, they were actually pouring massive amounts of funding into an absolute piece of digital witchcraft called Proton. It catches the game's proprietary DirectX commands in real time, instantly translates them into open source, Linux-friendly Vulkan instructions, and feeds them directly to the hardware. Because it translates the code on the fly rather than emulating an entire Windows environment, the performance loss is incredibly minimal. While Proton was working its digital magic to translate Windows games on the fly, Valve realized the job still wasn't finished. They took a hard look at the underlying foundation of the operating system itself and decided to completely gut it. The original architecture of SteamOS was built on Debian, a Linux distribution famous for its rock-solid stability but notorious for being incredibly slow to update. In a fast-paced gaming ecosystem that demands massive day-one patches and rapid driver updates, Debian was acting like a massive anchor dragging the entire project down. So for the creation of SteamOS 3, Valve's engineering team ruthlessly ripped the operating system down to the bare studs. They threw out the old playbook and rebuilt the entire platform from scratch on top of Arch Linux. Arch is an incredibly agile rolling release distribution, meaning it receives bleeding-edge software updates the absolute second they are ready. This massive architectural shift gave Valve unprecedented control, allowing them to push custom driver updates, tweak the Linux kernel, and optimize hardware performance on a granular level that Windows simply does not allow. After years of silent development and massive rebuilds, the software was finally bulletproof and ready to take on Microsoft. Now they just needed to design the perfect physical vessel to smuggle it into the hands of millions of gamers. In the summer of 2021, Valve finally dropped the bomb they had been secretly building for years: the Steam Deck. They didn't try to fight Xbox and PlayStation in the living room this time. They aggressively attacked a rapidly growing market that Microsoft and traditional PC builders were completely ignoring: the handheld gaming. It was a massive untapped frontier and Valve was uniquely positioned to dominate it. But the real genius of the Steam Deck wasn't just the impressive physical hardware. The device was actually a brilliant Trojan horse, designed for one specific purpose: to seamlessly force the brand new SteamOS 3 directly into the hands of millions of gamers. Because the Proton compatibility layer was now so incredibly advanced, the user experience was practically magic. Players could boot up massive resource-heavy AAA blockbusters like Elden Ring or Cyberpunk on a handheld Linux machine, and the games ran absolutely flawlessly right out of the box. The execution was so perfect that most users didn't even realize they were using Linux at all. To them, it just felt like a deeply optimized plug-and-play console. After a decade of brutal failures, complete rebuilds, and silent development, Valve had successfully smuggled their custom operating system into the mainstream, completely bypassing Microsoft's monopoly. SteamOS 3 didn't just successfully translate the games, it achieved something that Microsoft's Windows operating system has fundamentally failed to do for over 30 years. Valve utilized a piece of software called GameScope, a microcompositor that isolates the game from the rest of the operating system. This is why the Steam Deck has a flawless sleep-wake function. You can be in the middle of a massive boss fight, tap the power button, throw the console in your bag, and wake it up 3 days later in the exact same frame. Try doing that on a Windows gaming laptop. It will either crash, corrupt your save, or slowly roast itself alive inside your backpack. SteamOS removed the friction of PC gaming, but Valve didn't stop at handhelds. In a massive full-circle moment, Valve just launched the brand new 2026 Steam machine. People immediately lost their minds over the incredible price tag, starting at over $1,000. It is undeniably expensive. Critics called it a rip-off, but they completely missed Gabe Newell's actual 4D chess move. Valve doesn't care if you buy their expensive box, because at the exact same time, they quietly dropped an update giving away the keys to the kingdom. They officially released SteamOS for everyone to download for absolutely free, meaning you can finally build your own DIY Steam machine using whatever PC parts you want. And if you think this stops at AMD, you are dead wrong. For the first time ever, Valve confirmed they are actively collaborating directly with Intel and Nvidia to bring official SteamOS support to all desktop hardware. Nvidia has historically been a nightmare for Linux developers, but Valve is forcing their hand, building a dedicated team to get GeForce GPUs running flawlessly on their platform. Valve took an operating system that was considered an absolute failure in 2015, gutted it, supercharged it with Proton, and turned it into the most disruptive force in modern gaming. Microsoft's walled garden didn't kill Steam. It forced Steam to build a better operating system, and now they are giving it away to the entire world for free. If you made it to the end of this deep dive, you're an absolute legend. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss these prime drops coming at you. Drop a like and let me know in the comments, are you going to build your own DIY Steam machine? And what Nvidia GPU are you waiting for Valve to support? See you in the next one.